Clinton.
I'm Hillary.
And welcome to Black Atlantic. We're primarily a Black Atlantic-centric podcast, website, and media channel with the goal of bringing East Coast POC voices to the world.
You can expect to hear from us every week with guests, segments, panels, roundtables, exploring topics from all over Atlantic Canada.
So be sure to visit our website at blackatlantic.ca.
Also be sure to follow us at Black Atlantic on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and more. How are you this week? Or do you want to just jump into
it? Yeah, let's just jump into it.
Let's just jump into it. We're both good but tired people. We've had busy weeks. And so we're just going to jump into the topics. The first one is a heartfelt one that we've talked about on a previous podcast, which is why I wanted to bring it back around. A church in Halifax that has been facing years of renovations and was looking for additional funding, got their funding approved. So they will receive new provincial funding of $1.7 million to help finish their expansion. CBC spoke to some members of the church, Reverend Rhonda Britton, a pastor of New Horizons, who says she's been waiting a long time for someone to listen to her pleas. A thing that I want to highlight about this is who answered the plea is Pat Dunn, the province's Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs, a white man. The white man who we were all very skeptical would do anything for the Black people, because we were like, does he understand what they're going through? Would he be a kind person? Would there be any way to relate, etc.? And it appears $1.7 million later, he at least relates enough to the people trying to go to this church. Clinton, what do you think?
I think it's good. I think this is a historic church that is very important to the people of that community. I know they were worshiping out of somewhere else, and now after these renovations, they're going to be able to get back. It's promising. We don't want to say that Pat Dunn saved the day, but when he was elected as the Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs, there was obviously a huge amount of uproar. Hillary and I discussed this in length back in the day, because while there were other people in Parliament that the Prime Minister could have elected to this role, it is a Conservative government, and as there were no Black Conservatives, of course, for their own political chess strategies, they wanted to put their own people in the seats. But we also thought it was a big miss when they created this unique position and they failed to put a Black person in it. To save face after that, they brought on Dwayne Provo, and I'll just bring a picture back up of him. Dwayne Provo was a bit of a celebrity in Canada and Nova Scotia. I believe he was an ex-CFL player, but also a very intelligent person who had been getting into politics over the past couple of years. So very capable. He became the deputy minister, and it's good. It's always better than nothing happening. It's always better than the funding not being given to this community to restore this historic church. My understanding is Pat Dunn, the Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs, came through, but also that Dwayne Provo was an integral part of the communication between government and communities. One of his main jobs is to keep the communities of Nova Scotia up to date and informed with what the Department of African Nova Scotian Affairs is doing. From what we see, he's doing a good job at that. And yeah, it's a nice success story. It's a nice story of something good happening to the fine folks in Nova Scotia. I think it's pretty cool. I don't know what other programs are or are not being paid attention to, but certainly the people of the Richard Preston Center of Excellence in the New Horizons Baptist Church are celebrating this week for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think it really proves a testament to, if you're not going to put Black people specifically in power, at least having them as a liaison person is truly moves mountains, especially for these people. I think that it's huge, that Dwayne Provo was there to be able to do some of that. I'll call it cultural translation, and make sure that it's understood why this is so important to this people, why it's historic, why it deserves to be, for this construction to finish being built. So kudos. Hopefully there will be more things like this in all of the Atlantic provinces, but it's good to see that at least, the African Affairs Minister is doing good and not what we assumed.
We're not so quick to say that he's doing a great job yet. This is one action out of many to come, and
We'll see.
an important thing. The church is definitely very important to many Black communities and
Yes.
East Coast communities. But we'll see. I'm not giving him the green light yet. We'll see how he carries out. If there's major racial issues, or see if some of the deeper issues in Nova Scotia get addressed over the next few years through the Department of African Affairs.
For sure. This does perfectly segue into the next topic that I admittedly brought in last minute. It is something that just got announced today. Clinton doesn't know what this announcement is unless he read it earlier. And I don't think you did because he was busy. So the government of Canada launched an initiative to breathe new life into Atlantic Canadian main streets. And so what this is going to be, so there's a long thing talking about like the 2 years public health restrictions have made it necessary for businesses throughout Atlantic Canada, particularly those in the arts, culture, tourism, and hospitality and small retail businesses to shut down. As restrictions begin to ease, the government of Canada is committed to breathing new life into main streets, downtowns, and neighborhoods where many of these hard-hit businesses reside. So today, Honorable Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, Minister of Official Languages and Minister responsible of the ACOA, announced this new initiative. The Rediscover Main Streets initiative will foster collaboration that will create events, increase marketing and promotion of local institutions and happenings, and encourage the residents of others to visit main streets, downtowns, and neighborhoods. They will contribute up to $10 million to provide funds to nonprofit organizations across Atlantic Canada, including business improvement associations, tourism associations, chambers of commerce, and destination marketing organizations to help them generate new ideas that inspire locals and tourists alike to rediscover all that their main streets, downtowns, and neighborhoods have to offer. What? Are you as confused as I am?
I'm not confused.
I'm confused.
Tell me why you're confused first. I'm not sure how I feel about it.
I feel, well, maybe I'm just annoyed. Maybe I'm confusing confusion with annoyance, but you're saying at the top of this, for 2 years, these businesses have shuttered. And instead of just giving the 10 milli to those businesses after not always making COVID assistance easy throughout the 2 years for small businesses, you're giving it to nonprofit organizations and organizations that can bolster, like, not individual businesses, but business ideals as a whole for cities. Why don't you just give the individual businesses the money so that they can help themselves instead of giving it to like maybe a BIA, or I don't know if that's what they mean, but like, I don't know what nonprofits they're talking about, but I can understand the marketing stuff, but it's still like, that's like giving the money to Downtown Moncton as a nonprofit organization and not one of the specific restaurants. Why?
Yeah, my first thought was a bit of a money racket. I feel like a lot of that money in these different cities are going to be going into the pockets of these nonprofit organizations. It's going to go to fund the salaries and payrolls of people at these nonprofit organizations who are supposed to come up with ideas to revitalize downtowns. Now, I don't know that every city needs a downtown revitalization, first of all. So what's the qualifications for getting this money? I know Downtown Moncton can certainly use a huge makeover, but that's been struggling for decades. And that's not a COVID related thing. It would be, so people are quite quick to criticize. I mean, the federal government has not done a horrible job over the past couple of years providing businesses with money. Now, businesses that were incorporated had easier access to funds. And even when they released their initial plans, what would happen is there would be uproars and complaints. And, you know, they said they weren't going to get it perfect, but they would come back and they would revitalize their plans to include more and more businesses. So businesses that qualified, and not 100% of them did get money over the past few years. The New Brunswick government, you know, they gave out some grants as well. But this idea, it seems very sloppy and disorganized in the idea that I saw that look on your face. It's not even what I was talking about. Sorry. No, that's okay. The plan doesn't make sense. I don't know. Each city gets $10 million to go to nonprofit organizations, of which we do not know. There are definitely government related and city related organizations that already exist that have these tasks, you know, improve Main Street, like what kind of things, flyers do we want to have on posters? What kind of businesses can we support? What businesses are we lacking? I just don't know where the money's going to go. I don't know. You always hear these astronomical numbers, $10 million to how many nonprofit organizations in these towns? What are the criteria, and what are the auditing processes to make sure this money was put to good use and not just going into the pockets of the chairs or the board members and stuff like that to sit around chatting like we are, come up with ideas to maybe help a new business open, make a new park, paint the garbage cans. I don't understand this revitalization process, especially because after all the money that's been printed in Canada to begin with for the past 2 years, to like all this CERB, CRA, CERB, like where'd this money come from? They're printing money, which is going to lead to inflation, obviously, and it already is. Seems like a waste of money to me. It's not confusing. It just seems kind of stupid.
I'm with you. There's nothing in this that says like which cities, how many cities of each province in the Atlantic Canadas that we're going to get anything, if it's going to be split up, how many nonprofits, and then it like, where is it that it said, oh, nonprofit organizations are encouraged to team up to take a problem-solving active approach to drive consumers back to vibrant activity hubs, which is unhelpful. But it also, everything it said about like tourism industry, hospitality. So it's not just nonprofits. Like they listed a lot of things, but not a lot of places. I find it already sounds unorganized. I don't understand the criteria. And
it certainly lacks clarity.
Yeah, it lacks clarity. And again, I find it weird not to just give it to the bit, like I'm picturing Moncton and I'm picturing Main Street, and I'm just thinking like give some money to the businesses on Main Street. I just don't know what a nonprofit, like what they're going to do. And maybe that's me being cynical and closed-minded, but like what you're going to paint the crosswalks again, that doesn't go well any year.
Yeah. I mean, and why, if you want to expand on that, why just downtown businesses, right? So how do you decide what businesses, like if is this going to support street festivals? Maybe. Is this going to support, I guess the goal is to get people to go downtown. Very confusing. I'd like to look into this more. And because you always hear about the announcement of these things, but it's very rare that the media reports on what was done with the money.
Of course. So, yeah,
that is a weird surprise announcement. And is this just Atlantic focused, or is this for all of Canada?
No, it's Atlantic focused. It's only Atlantic Canada from Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, not a huge fan of her, but I'm not sure that the like, what's the argument for it? Where's the statistics that say that downtown was hit the hardest? Why are businesses in suburbs and more non-downtown areas not being focused on?
No.
So we've got Halifax, Dartmouth, Moncton, Fredericton, St. John's, Charlottetown, and St. John's.
George Street.
Like, every town in the Maritime. Like, who gets the money?
I don't know. I guess
I'd like to know more. This sounds very unorganized.
Just says this initiative will foster collaboration that will create events, increase marketing and promotion of local institutions and happenings, and encourage residents and others to visit Main Streets, downtowns, and neighborhoods. So putting more advertising on buses to go to Fredericton.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, street festivals and ads. Yeah, that's my surprise. The government's doing stuff again and I don't get it. That's a lot of millions of dollars, that's for sure.
Yup, that's how I feel.
Well, if we ever hear more about what they're actually doing with that, we'll have to
follow up,
get back on that.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else do we have here? So we saw a report in the Halifax Examiner by Matthew Byard. How do you say his last name?
I've always said Byard.
Said it out loud.
Byard.
About something that won't be a surprise to many, but it's an article about, and let me pull this up here. A study or an interview with a gentleman named Brian Daly about the lack of Black voices in local media being inexcusable. This is a journalism professor who had a long conversation here, but essentially he is the president of the Black Canadian, the Canadian Association of Black Journalists, which is a networking and advocacy organization for Black journalists in the country. And basically this article is just highlighting the same challenges that have been around forever, and I guess just aren't getting much better, that there is a lack of Black voices in local media. You and I know that. It's part of why we do this. What are your thoughts on this, Hillary?
I found it really interesting that, so he like points out that he's from Montreal, had lived in Quebec, had worked there for like CBC, CTV, a bunch of different media corporations there, and was just shocked at the juxtaposition when he finally came out to Halifax and how there was nothing there, which is part of the reason why he created that organization and works at King's College. I also noticed that he said, which I found really interesting, we have the Newfoundlanders who have their stranglehold on comedy ever since I was a kid with Air Farce, and now this hour has 22 minutes. It's like we, Black people, don't have the recognition of unique and distinct people in this part of the country. And I find that so interesting because our podcast highlights so many unique and interesting people. And I think, you know, our podcast, not to toot our own horn, but is obviously trying to combat this lack of at least Black media or Black voices. I wouldn't say we're not necessarily media yet. We're still part entertainment and doing our own thing and funny. Or I think we're funny.
So funny.
So funny.
So funny.
Yeah. However, I do agree that it is a shame. And like you said, we've talked about this before, you know, in Ontario, there's like byblacks.com, which our next article is going to be from them. And we know of little pockets further west of New Brunswick. And then when you get to the Atlantic provinces, it's sort of like that idea just drops dead there. And you and I think both agree that we do not know why, because there's a need for it. There are the unique voices. There are a bunch of people doing great things. And I don't know if it's a separation, if it's that everyone's in these individual little pods and pockets, and it feels like people aren't reaching out enough to collaborate, or if it's a lack of resources. But I fully agree that it's inexcusable and that there needs to be more diversity, not only coming from a lot of the organizations that he worked with in the past and have listed that could be hiring more people of color, but also the more knowledge on funding and creation of your own platforms and medias and voices, because the funding is there. A lot of people just don't know how to tap into it.
Absolutely. You know, and like you said, our next article is going to be from By Blacks, and this may tie into what we're talking about right now. But I think part of the lack of these representative voices in Atlantic Canada is simply the fact that Black people have never been listened to. I've never had their voices highlighted, especially in media. One of the big things I would complain about a lot when I first got into podcasting with a previous organization is the only time it seems like Atlantic media wants to hear from Black people is when it has to do with an issue of racism, pain, hatred, sorrow, something really bad that happened, something that reminds Black people of our oppression, or that is like a shock story of a racist incident. Then they want to get Black people's opinions on it. You never see Black people in the media in Atlantic Canada being asked about their opinion on the financial markets or the environment or science or news or anything of the sort. And, you know, it's changed a bit, but there's also not many people of color voices in the media at all. I know I've seen some Middle Eastern voices. I think there may have been one or two Black reporters. Of course, there's Matthew Byard in Halifax, and you know, there's a stronger community there. But as more and more groups like our own work to get voices out there, I hope this starts to change. Now, we're not calling ourselves media or news or journalism or anything like that. We're a podcast where we talk about serious things sometimes, but we're also just informative and for entertainment. But there's more organizations in New Brunswick now. Over in Prince Edward Island, 2 new organizations popped up last year. you tell me the names of them, the Black
Is it Black
Cooperative,
Collective Media? Are you
Black
thinking of
Collective Media,
yeah,
and then the Historical Society. I don't know if that's been around for a long time, and if
yeah,
they had been, they definitely did not have the voice and reach and exposure that they used to have.
yeah.
Their network channels have really exploded in the past year. That's great. Nova Scotia has always had a strong Black community,
Mhm.
which still needs more work.
Yeah.
And Newfoundland, I think, has a small Black community, but we're even been diving in there. And there's no groups or channels or podcasts or news outlets for specifically focused on Black issues there. But we're trying to get people from. I think one of our next guests is going to be a Newfoundland artist. I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah.
Baby steps. I mean, big steps would be better, but at least there's progress happening, not just for Black people, but I feel people of all cultures need to be better represented in the Atlantic provinces.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely agree. And I think that I also just want to shout out Sandra Hannenbaum, who
Mhm.
we've connected with out of Nova Scotia, who's actually doing research into this. And we hope to have her as a guest in the future, but who's actually looking into why is there not enough Black media, and has a lot of great historical knowledge about Black print media, specifically in newspapers that have come to exist and gone simply because they don't have like the white financial backing power like way back in the day. And now I assume there's just more of a disinterest. And even thinking about that, like most if not all of the New Brunswick newspapers were always owned by the Irvings and now owned by Post Media. I don't know how a Black run newspaper would have ever come out and tried to compete or be different or be interesting or be out there with those huge giants owning every print media that existed. So it's definitely complicated and
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Yeah, she's really asking a lot of hard pressing questions, and she's
Yeah.
trying to knock down some serious doors in some profound ways. So really interested to see what she comes up with.
Yeah.
And we should give a shout out to Matthew Bayard as
Bayard,
well,
yeah.
because he runs Black Nova Scotia News, a Facebook group with close to 10,000 followers. So he's putting a lot of content out there
Yeah.
in a great way as well. Okay, I'm having fun with these screen shares that we do in the past couple of weeks. All right, so our last article is that we came across that we found interesting, relates to this. It's on BibleActs.com. It's written by Dorcas Marfo, and this is a repeated theme that we've all heard and known, and a lot of us have heard since childhood, just kind of ingrained in us, which is, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because sometimes when you hear too much of a negative thing, you really do believe it. In this case, it's pretty true, though. This is an article that says, where a recent poll was done in the past year, surveying over 1,000 Canadians, unfortunately, most in Ontario, as opposed to across the whole country. The main feature of the survey said that 70% of Black Canadians say they have to work twice as hard to gain respect in the workplace. Now, is that number down from 100% 10 years ago? Because that's a theme that I have heard my entire life since childhood, both for Black people. And you hear that said for women as well. And you hear that said for a lot of cultures. But it was a survey done, and you could probably give the details of this survey better. I'll actually pass this over to you from what you took from the article.
Sure. I mean, some more statistics, just 44% of the respondents were male, 56% were female. 20% of respondents say that their company has taken no action when they talk about racism. 12% say that their company's promise to be more inclusive is simply lip service. Nearly a third of respondents say they've continued to experience microaggressions and racism at work. 14% say that it has actually increased. And I believe a lot of this, they say at the beginning, all obviously comes in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, and trying to see how these businesses are handling the so-called change that they said that they would participate in and do in the summer of 2020. And we're 2 years later, and people are saying that it's either stagnant or has gotten worse. Hold on.
While we're saying this, look at this. Someone gave this Dorcas Marfo article, a 1 star here. That's ridiculous. I read this article. It was really well written. Anyone
Yeah.
who wants to go find her article on Buy Blacks, just give her a little 5-star there. Okay,
Heck
go on.
yeah. No, I was just going to say that 67% believe that their employers are making genuine efforts to hire more Black Canadians. 58% say they are making sincere efforts to promote more Black Canadians into leadership roles. Interestingly, 19% say that they got a job they previously would have been overlooked for. So it does seem to be a bit hit or miss, I suppose. I would assume that it would depend on the area, the location, the field, because there's going to be some places that are, actually trying to empower Black people. There's some people that are still tokenizing Black people, and there are some places that are still not doing a good job. And I mean, there's still that, what's the word I'm looking for? That lawsuit against the government for their mistreatment of Black people is still also ongoing as well. So we know full well that one of the places that does not tend to treat their employers well is our very own government. So I by and large, I don't find the statistics surprising that 70% feel like they have to work harder. Whether they actually do, or it's just so ingrained in us that it is a preconceived notion that we come into. There is so much intergenerational trauma that comes from being mistreated in places where white people are in power. It would take a long time for me to really unlearn that. Like, even though I was raised by a white mom, I was still afraid of doing interviews with like purple braids last summer. So it's something I've learned, and I didn't even live with my Black people. So if that's something that persists, through hearsay and media and sharing of stories, then of course that feeling is still going to exist. And I think it's really sad that despite what all these companies are saying, not everyone has actually done what they said they would do in the wake of the murder of George Floyd.
I think these stats are accurate and they do reflect my life. It was interesting. So 1/3 of these Canadians said things have gotten better. 1/3 said, by generalization, so 1/3 said there was some progress. And then, like you said, there was like the 20 plus the 12%, about 1/3 say things have gotten worse. And that's no surprise, because there's definitely going to be backlash from all the Canadians that were hateful, being quiet during Black Lives Matter, that were just waiting for their moment in the sun to get out there and start being really hateful again. And eventually we're going to have a woman named Alicia on the show who has a lot of interesting stories from the west coast of Canada, Alberta, which is like the racist capital of our country. Sorry to any Albertans out there listening, not all of you, but more of you than anywhere else. I know in my own life that I've felt that I've had to work twice as hard to get the same amount of recognition. Back when I was in the food and beverage industry, I felt like I was always busting my butt and working harder than others who would be sitting around and slacking and always getting more favor from the bosses. I felt I was really harshly judged for simple mistakes I may have made that others may have made. And then in one of my first blogs, when I worked at the Casino New Brunswick for 2 years, I was certainly treated much worse, paid much less, did not receive the same respect as my peers, the same consideration in terms of my scheduling. I was judged harsher, got write-ups for ridiculous things. And I could just feel the harshness. And, it could be, I don't know. There's a lot of people who feel they may have to work twice as hard to get the same level of respect. This could be conditioning I've had from childhood, which made me afraid to ask what I was worth at that place, whereas some of the more whiny people there got more than me because I was more focused on putting my head down, working hard and being seen than just, smoozing and mingling with the managers and bosses to get ahead. And, maybe I've learned that is the way you got to play in this industry. But certainly, not to be rude, but I can tell you that the other people who were at my management level, that were treated so much better, got paid more, got more respect. They didn't go on to do much after that job. So they got the job, and they either didn't stay in management or didn't amount to much after that. So there's got to be something there. I'm definitely nowhere near the top of the upper echelon of society, but I've done well over the years, and the management. The type of management I displayed there got me places and really helped me out. So I couldn't have been doing anything too wrong, whereas I'm still in this field and others are not. It's a experience that Black people have experienced since the beginning, since we were called Black people, because Black really started in North America after slavery, or during slavery. And this study is far from being accurate to begin with, because there's over 1 million Canadians in Canada, and just interviewing 1,000, 50% of them in Ontario is not representative, especially in a province like Ontario, where, while they have a lot of racial issues, they probably have the least. Go ahead, Hillary.
No, I think you said 1 million Canadians, we meant 1 million Black Canadians, and I'm just going to look up how many Black Canadians there are.
I meant 1 million Black Canadians. I'm done speaking. If you want to,
I'm trying to figure out 1,198,000 Black Canadians.
Okay, so I just took the general population of Canada, and I did 3%, because I knew that Canada was about 3% Black people.
Yeah, I mean, in my work experience, I wouldn't say that I've never felt like racially profiled in the sense that I've had to work more. It's always been microaggressions. Like when I was working at Shoppers Drug Mart, and I was like probably 15 or 16, someone had called and said something about the Black cashier, and the manager made a point to come up to me and say that, oh, like we forgot you were Black. We kept asking, what cashier are you talking about, as if they wanted a prize for forgetting that I was the only Black person. I know one time that they
didn't forget.
No. One time they took all of the product off of the shelf because they thought that negro, as in the Black word for Spanish, was the N word, and they thought that like Revlon had done a typo for Black mascara because it had all 3 languages, and I had to tell them to put them all back. I had to like cute. come into work, and there's like 30 mascaras on a counter, and I'm like, how are these all expired? They're like, no, it's racist. And I was like, it's Spanish. It's not racism, it's Spanish. So that was a mess. So it happens in so many different locations. It doesn't in one of my current jobs, it does not. I'm very proud to say my community health center job is the most inclusive place that I've worked at. Only one person is white out of the 5 of us. And so it's a lot of great melanated energy, and a very, very safe space. And so I never feel any qualms about what I look like, my mannerisms, how I speak, or anything like that. But we also keep it very professional. No one's out here doing like the AAVE or speaking with their hands too aggressively in community health, but definitely a safe space. But I do wish that they had polled more people, especially considering, I think that this says Ontario has 627,000 Black people. So only polling 1,000 people is really not indicative of anything, though I do think a lot of people probably agree with some of the sentiments. They should definitely either try again or poll more people or something, because I would be really interested to see how it changes at the polar ends of the province, country.
Yeah. I mean, polls are never accurate. They're always just small sample sizes of populations.
For sure.
I feel like these polls aren't for Black people anyways, because we all know this stuff.
Well, that's what we've been saying about so many different people and organizations conducting surveys to then make recommendations to the government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
I know, although I did speak very highly of her in a call earlier today. So
there you go.
Manju Varma, if you're listening, I'm really trying to be your friend out here in these streets. I don't think she's listening. But if you are, I said very nice things about you today in a call about recommendations to the government, how I hope they take everything you say.
But I guess basically for our listeners who, to be honest, are primarily white,
and like to fight with us in the comments.
Yeah, that's just a very small percentage of the population. We're not out here saying the whole province or the whole country is racist. Far from it. There's actually millions, probably the majority of white people are, if not fully understanding of the issues, sympathetic, and there's a lot of allyship. But basically, if you're in management, if you're hiring, if you have Black employees in your workspace, please don't go up to them and be like, hey, I heard you have to work twice as hard. What can we do for you? But just be aware of that. Check your biases, make sure that you are treating all team members equally. There are lots of programs for workplace inclusion and workplace sensitivity training, diversities and stuff like that. make sure everyone on the team is treated equally. And, for those who are hiring, we've said this before, a lot of racism takes place before the interview even takes place. If it's a hard to pronounce name, if it sounds like an African or Middle Eastern or an Indian name, I've seen in management, managers just not even bother. Oh,
Yeah.
I can't pronounce this name. They probably don't speak English, or,
Yeah.
I don't think they'd be a good fit. So they just pass over them. And that's actually where the workplace bias starts, even before an interview takes place. They don't even get called. I guess the thing to take away from this survey is that, yeah, Black people, as well as other, underrepresented groups in workplaces, don't get treated equally. And, not much has changed since George Floyd's murder. There's still a long way to go and a lot of work to be done. So if people take anything from this podcast, it's just to keep working, keep working towards a more equal society.
If you want to work towards a more equal workplace, consider adopting a system in which all applicants are just a number, and you do not know their name and you do not know their race until you pull them in for the interview, and you can just be surprised. Someone suggested that to me the other day in my family, and I was like, that's a great idea. Why are you hearing Hillary LeBlanc and then getting all shocked? I'd be shocked too if I came in looking like a highlighter like I do right now, but I digress. A great takeaway. I think that's a podcast.
That's a podcast. That's it for this week.
Yes.
Short and sweet, I think. Maybe 40 minutes.
Maybe.
All right.
Follow us on all of the places.
All the places. Yeah. Follow us on social media. Type Black Atlantic into pretty much anything and you will find us. Wherever you're listening to us now, thank you. Please follow, share our content, share our page. That really helps get the word out there. We are a new organization. And we've had a quick expansion, but we're looking to grow even bigger. So thank you for listening, and check us out at blackatlantic.ca. Any final thoughts?
All the social medias. We have a GoFundMe. Please donate. Thank you as always to chma.fm for streaming us Sunday nights at 8 p.m. through Sackville.
Cropberry. If anyone's
Cropberry.
looking for you on social media, I'm simply Clinton Davis until I change my name to something more creative.
And the Salon Dieppe, go buy some stuff. I saw that you were having a sale on some things, and I have a cart. I was like, I think I'm gonna go shopping.
Oh, amazing. I'm embarrassed. That's our winter sale. I haven't changed yet. So if there's anything in your cart on sale that you want, get
Move
it
fast. Move
because
fast.
I was supposed to change those on February 15th and I haven't.
I got a notification. Facebook was showing me that like you had moved. It was like new or something. It was Facebook marketing.
No.
Maybe.
All
right. Well, it's working for you. Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Peace.